Hello, good morning. Good morning. Welcome to this wonderful weekend, the 50th Gaudino Commemorative celebration. It's just fantastic to see all of you here. Thank you so much for joining us this weekend. My name is Amy Holtzapfel, and I go by she, her, and I am a professor of theater and also the current Gaudino Scholar. It's been my pleasure to be working with this amazing board over the past 2 years. I'm in my 3rd year in this role, and to be planning for this wonderful celebration of Gaudino's legacy, thinking about his work and his impact in the past, and also the ways that the Gaudino legacy will continue into the future, really forward thinking into the next 50 years. So last night, some of you joined us for a wonderful staged reading of one of Gaudino's plays from 1963, and it was very exciting to hear some of his work embodied and to be thinking about how his ideas resonate and activate on the stage. And here we have another stage that we're presenting, and I'm going to introduce the moderator for this wonderful panel, and then he will be introducing the rest of the panelists. So I want to start out by thanking a couple of people. I want to thank James Matthew, Paula Consolini, Raquel Cuellar Parajon, Lauren Berensky, and all of the facilities and technical staff who've helped to bring us together for this exciting weekend. So thank you to all of you. So it is my pleasure to introduce the moderator for our panel today, Learning Together Behind the Walls, Reflections on the Inside Out course at the Berkshire House of Corrections, Magnús T. Bernardsson. When I asked Magnús to provide me with a bio, he gave me a sentence. So I elaborated a little bit, very like him. So Magnús is the Brown Professor of History and Faculty Affiliate in Arabic Studies, Leadership Studies, and Religion, the brainchild and former director of the Global Scholars Program and former Gaudino Scholar. He specializes in modern Middle East, specifically the political and cultural history of Hashemite Iraq, on which he has published many books and edited volumes. Magnús received his BA in political science from the University of Iceland and an MA in religion from Yale Divinity School. And after a year in Syria studying Arabic, he returned to Yale to earn a PhD in Middle Eastern history. Magnús came to Williams in 2003 after teaching at Hofstra. In 2007, he was the recipient of the Nelson Bushnell Prize for Excellence in Teaching from Williams College. From 2011 to 2014, he organized his work as Gaudino Scholar around the theme of dangerous learning. Some of the questions posed by this initiative included, what is danger? What ideas are dangerous? Can art be dangerous? What about science? How do we deal with and confront danger? Among the programs begun during his tenure were the Inside Out course discussed today, the Human Library program, as well as a series of Gaudino forums on the topic of danger in the liberal arts. I fondly recall viewing a performance by the choreographer and extreme action specialist Elizabeth Streb, in which dancers flipped and fell from heights of over 20 feet. Another example of his initiative and the power and the ways it resonates with those of us who were here during that time. After this panel, you can ask Magnús about his new book called History Be Damned, about hydroelectric dams in the Middle East and how they've impacted and destroyed historical sites. Please join me in welcoming Magnús, who will now introduce our panelists.
Well, thank you, Amy, for a very generous, exaggerated introduction. And thank you, Amy, for organizing this, and Paula and everybody, all of you, and James and all of you who have been organizing this weekend. And I will first introduce briefly the panelists who are here today, and then I'm going to ask them some opening questions. But before I do that, sort of ask them the questions, I'm going to give a little bit of a background of how this sort of course came to be and this relationship between the Berkshire House of Corrections and Williams College. And first of all, just to say that this, the fact that we're here on stage couldn't have been possible without the incredible efforts of two people in particular. On the one hand, it's Paula Consolini in the Center for Learning in Action, the Office of Experiential Education. She's there in the back, on the one hand. And then Al Bianchi, on the other hand, who's sitting here, sort of to the far end, if you could raise your hand, who works for the Berkshire House of Corrections, who has been sort of very instrumental on that side. So before I introduce the very esteemed panelists, just so as Amy mentioned, when I was Gaudino Scholar, the focus was danger, and we then started thinking about offering this kind of course because Amherst College has this kind of course, so we thought, why not us as well? But there were also some other intellectual, pedagogical reasons to do it. But when we started planning this, we didn't really think that this would be that complicated necessarily. But at the same time, we knew that we were dealing with two institutions, Berkshire County House of Corrections on the one hand and Williams College on the other. And there were a few things, and this was sort of often a very difficult conversation to know where sort of our red lines are, what are our principles, where do we sort of negotiate, where do we compromise and where do we not compromise. And these were often very difficult conversations. And I was very grateful that as Gaudino Scholar that I had the Gaudino board that was then chaired by Jeff Taylor, who sort of helped think us through, and then my colleagues as well, to think about, okay, what do we really stand for as an institution, and so on and so forth. Now let me give you a few examples. So when we first started, sort of talking to the Berkshire House of Corrections, one of the first things that emerged was, at that point, the Berkshire House of Corrections only had males at the House of Corrections. And so therefore, initially, the Berkshire House of Corrections, BHOC, only wanted male students from Williams to come to this program. And we talked about that a lot, and sort of, would we be willing to sort of sacrifice that, to just sort of exclude all females from this option? And we thought, no, that's not something that we could sort of in good conscience allow to happen. So we fought very hard, and Christian Thorne was very sort of instrumental in making this sort of clear, that we have to open this to all Williams students irrespective of gender. And fortunately, after some negotiations with the sheriff and the Berkshire House of Corrections, then women and men, or all genders, were allowed access to the course. So that was sort of battle number one. Battle number two was what kind of course they should be, because we had seen other courses at other colleges that most of the time these kind of courses focus on criminal justice system and things for crime and punishment, and we did not want this to be that kind of a course where sort of the outside students, and in this panel we use the term outside and inside students, so outside students refer to the students who come from outside sort of the Berkshire House of Correction, i.e. regular Williams students, and the inside students are those who are at the Berkshire House of Corrections. That the outside students and the inside students would be taking a course of a sort of a general topic, so that the outside students, this would not be sort of like, well, the inside students are sort of native informants, and this would be some sort of a peek into sort of the underworld or anything like that. We just wanted to have general topics, and I think that has been one of the success of our programs, is that we have consistently had general topics courses. For example, the courses that Professor McCardlin teaches and Professor Thorne has taught, and I think that has been very instrumental to have this kind of relationship in the classroom. Thirdly, this is where Williams became very difficult, and we had a lot of battles, is that if students are taking this course, what kind of credit will they get? And initially, Williams College did not want the inside students to get Williams College credit. And they said, well, they should just get BCC credit, Berkshire Community College credit, or some sort of local Berkshire House of Community Corrections credit. And we were insistent, no, they should get, if they're in the classroom together, they're all students, they should get the same kind of credit. Why should there be some sort of different kind of credit in the system? And then there was the slippery slope domino theory. Well, students work very hard to get into Williams. We have an admissions process, and the inside students have not gone through that process, so why should we give them Williams credit? And then maybe after, if they take 32 courses, they might have a Williams degree. And we thought, well, in the unlikely event that somebody could potentially take 32 courses over 32 years, then maybe. But fortunately, we were able to convince the institution that inside students also get Williams credit, which I think is very, very important. Then finally, the most difficult battle of all, sort of where we went into the inner sanctum, where sort of when we started this conversation, I thought the skies would open up and the snakes would fall down, Mount Vesuvius would start erupting. This is dealing with the calendar and scheduling committee, talking about the division of the day, the holy that you cannot do anything because this course, logistically, students have to leave campus, drive for half an hour down to the Berkshire House of Corrections, and then there's time to get into security and so on and so forth. And the calendar scheduling committee did not like the fact that we could not fit this in the regular 75-minute time slots or the 3-hour time slots. And so, therefore, this was like, as if we were bringing an end to the liberal arts ideals of Williams College by sort of going outside of the division of the day and the calendar and scheduling committee. And fortunately, after some negotiation, which was the most difficult negotiations of all, they decided that we could get an exception to the division of the day, and indeed that has proven to be. Finally, this is sort of where things got very interesting, where we talked about this a lot, was when the outside students come into the Berkshire House of Corrections. Obviously, there are some security measures that take into place, and the House of Corrections has rules in terms of what students are allowed to wear. You cannot wear things with political statements. You cannot wear revealing clothing or jewelry or things of that nature. That could be a threat or something. And so there was this question, are we limiting outside students' freedom of expression by controlling what they wear in a classroom? We generally don't have rules in our regular classes, so why should we have rules to this one? But fortunately, after some negotiation and some grumblings among some of our colleagues, we were able to sort of state that it's for the sake of security and safety, we have to follow the rules of our host institution, the Berkshire House of Corrections. And this is not a required course, this is an optional course. And so if students want to take this course, they have to follow the rules of this course. And so therefore their freedom of expression might be slightly limited in this particular case. So these were some of the practical things. And I'm so grateful that despite these obstacles, that it has now been running largely through the efforts of both the Paola Consolini's office and Al Bianchi, and then the remarkable faculty who have taught in this program throughout. So I'll introduce our panelists, and I'll go in, maybe not exactly in order as they're sitting, but sort of in sort of chronological order. And I would like to introduce first Christian Thorn, who was the first Williams professor to teach in this program, and he teaches courses in critical theory and in English literature, specializes in the 17th and 18th centuries. And so he took the Temple University Inside Out program training in 2012, and he taught the very first Inside Out course called Happiness in the spring of 2013 and 2014, and has since generously advised colleagues teaching in the program ever since. So he's been a very important mentor to the faculty members teaching in this program. And he, I think, in some ways really set the tone, both in terms of the topic, but also in terms of what kind of teaching takes place in these courses. Sitting to my immediate right, my former coach in the Williamstown Elementary Youth Soccer Program is Keith McPartland. He's the Associate Professor of Philosophy. Keith is the professor here at Williams who has taught this course the most, 5 times. And he has been very, very instrumental in sort of recruiting other professors and convincing them to, Keith is very convincing, and to teach in this course. And the course you have taught is The Good Life in Greek and Roman Ethics, that you've taught 5 times over the last 12 years. Then I've already briefly mentioned Al Bianchi, and he has served as the Assistant Deputy superintendent for programs at the Berkshire County House of Corrections for the last 25 years. And some of his current responsibilities include education, reentry services, volunteer services, and so on and so forth. So he's really been our point person as far as this program is concerned. To his immediate right, we have Kayla Gilman, who is Williams class of 21.5, and she entered the Inside Out program as a student in Professor Kirby's fall 2018 class. And she came and was your TA in the fall of the next year, and then she also served as another TA for Bernardsson class in fall of 19. Then she also, with Keith McPartland's mentorship and Cleo's and the Gaudino Fund's support, she designed and taught a semester-long comics course at the Berkshire County House of Correction. She entered as a student. She also was a TA, and then she actually taught her own course, and now she lives and works in New York, is the coalition coordinator at the Take Root Justice. Then we have two inside students. Two closest to me is Thomas Peterson, if you want to raise your hand. And Tom took Christian Thorne's happiness course in the spring of 2013. He is currently a tree work specialist living in northern Berkshire County with his wife and children. And to his immediate right is Greg Parslow, and Greg Parslow took Jim Nolan's spring 2017 course, What They Saw in America, and he currently lives in Pittsfield, which is about 40 minutes south of here, and works for a spring water distribution company, and he enjoys working out and kayaking in his spare time. So we have a very interesting panel, and so maybe we will start by, I'm going to start by talking to the Williams professors, then we'll hear a little bit from Al Bianchi, then we'll hear from the outside students, then we'll hear from the inside students. So maybe we'll start with you, Christian and Keith. Maybe if you could sort of start by reflecting on how was this course different from the other courses that you have sort of generally teach at the college?
Oh boy. Well, so Magnús, you have to figure, I think it's the hallmark of some of the best Gaudino initiatives that they're going to challenge the professors as much as they're going to challenge anybody else at the college. Figuring out how to teach this course well was one of the biggest and most interesting challenges I've ever had at the college. Not because, this is really important, not because the aims of the course were so different from an ordinary Williams College course, but precisely because the goals were the same, but pursued in a radically different setting. That is to say, if we think about the hallmark of a liberal arts education, and especially of a liberal arts seminar, the goal is not simply for a professor to hand down a body of settled expertise. The goal is to activate reflection and thought in a group of students collaboratively and through conversation. So that's what we wanted to do, just in the setting of a House of Correction library and not a Griffith classroom. So the question is, how do you do that? How do you do that with a wider set of students? Students to be, candid, whose degrees of preparation are radically different from one another, right? So the interesting challenge was how to make sure that the outside students and the inside students were on equal footing. And it turns out that in order to achieve the goals of a good, high-functioning Williams College seminar, everything about the teaching has to change. Everything about the teaching has to change. Because, what's the reason? Because if somebody like Keith, somebody in my position, if a professor walks into that mixed classroom and defaults back to an ordinary teaching persona relies on ordinary classroom habits that confers automatic advantage on the Williams students, that is the outside students, who know how to thrive in that kind of classroom. So the only way to equalize the situation is to do none of the things that you ordinarily do, and that's very hard. So in my case, in the first one out, I decided I was going to make two big changes. One, I was able to make comprehensively and in one swoop in designing the course, and the other I had to learn and practice gradually as the semester went on. The one I was able to make in one swoop was to design a course that did not, in fact, play to my established expertise. That is to say, I made a point of teaching a course on topics I knew very little about, and that was a way of what? Of making it impossible for me to hold forth, right? Professors like to hear themselves talk, and it's harder to do that, and it's harder to then, the idea was not to want to bring everybody up in that room to like scholarly standards. This is the sort of course where that wasn't the point. So not teaching in my scholarly specialty was then a way of doing that. The second thing was then, in fact, that the harder thing, the thing that I had to work on week after week after week was how just to talk less, right? Because the whole point of this course, above and beyond even any ordinary campus seminar, was to allow a very disparate group of students to talk to each other in searching ways. So every week I went in and said my piece to get things moving. And then every week I thought, okay, you talk too long. And then I vowed each week to talk less, but I felt that way every week. I went from 15 minutes to 14 minutes to 13 minutes to 12 minutes. My goal was like to walk in on the last week and just do it all with mime. I didn't, so I wanted to get, I think I got to a point where I could extract from the reading 5 minutes worth of essential points that I wanted to be sure that everybody in the room had in common, and then we could get to a topic, a conversational prompt, if you like, and then just hand it over to the room and retire, withdraw, and let the students carry it for, these were once a week classes, hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and I was finally kind of amazed how well that worked.
Thank you. Keith, do you want?
Does this work? Okay. So I'm Keith McPartland. I'm in the philosophy department here. I taught the class after Christian had done it for 2 years. I visited Christian's class a number of times. Before I came to Williams, when I was in graduate school, I taught for a few years at Auburn Correctional Facility in New York. So I had, some experience teaching classes to incarcerated people. But I had never done something where, I remember talking with Christian about this. It's like I kind of got the hang of that over a number of years, and I had a very good friend that I did it with. But the idea of how are you going to get these two groups of students to mesh was like really a source of anxiety. But then I visited Christian's class, and they seemed to mesh very well. And I learned from people who came before. We try to pick, and as I've advised people that have taught it since, just try to pick topics of like perennial human interest, right? topics that aren't specialized, topics that everybody cares about, and try to let people's actual thoughts about those topics of perennial human interest shape things. So I have taught the class as a kind of Greek and Roman ethics class, although we rarely get to Rome. So you were reading a lot of Plato, Aristotle, Epicurus, Epictetus, different Stoic works, and just different conceptions of what does living well mean. And again, it's remarkable how well people meld. I mean, I'm not really an icebreaker guy by nature, but like I did do icebreakery type of things, and within 15 minutes, they're a group, right? The inside students and the outside students just become like a coherent class very, very quickly. And then, you know, I want to go one step further than Christian. I was trying to get to the point where all I really did was drive the van. And then I was thinking that in an ideal world, I could even like outsource that. So, you know, it would be a class where you do as little as possible. So part of the goal there, and I think this speaks to what Christian was saying too, is you almost want to intentionally wrong foot students who are coming into the class thinking of it as just a kind of academic exercise. You want people to really try to think hard about these questions themselves, about like, what does it take for me to live a good life? And one of the things is that a lot of the inside students, they've had very different life experiences, and they've had a lot more life experience. And the idea is that gives you a kind of question, and I've said this to people, I don't know, like I've talked with everybody who's taught the class after me, and I'm always saying you should pick a topic where the inside students actually have an advantage just by having lived life to a greater extent than a lot of the Williams students have, right? They've just got more years, they have more concerns. And I think that that really makes the course work in a certain way. So the other thing, I mean, first of all, Kayla came to TA for me at one point. That really made the class a lot better. It was part of my goal to eventually remove myself entirely, but I've been told I'm not allowed to do that by the calendar and schedule committee. So a kind of thing that developed over time, and I don't think it could have developed if it was just a course at a correctional facility or just a Williams course. Weirdly, I started having more and more people, and I preferred people who were mostly seniors or like juniors in college. And at the House of Corrections, people who are there, there's a limit to the length of sentences that people are serving generally. So one of the things that I noticed maybe the second time through the class is that I had a lot of kids who were graduating and I had a lot of inside students who were about to get released. And what that led to was this kind of final exercise that we would do for the class where it was just, all right, we've read these, you know, various Greek people, and what do you think? Like, what do you think a good life would be? And some of the things that people wrote about that have really stuck with me in lots of ways. I mean, people really did take a certain kind of care in thinking through what it really would be for them to live well. So again, I've taught the class a lot of times. I'm sort of, when things fall through, Paul asks me to do it. So I'm sort of the, I don't know, the relief pitcher. But it's been one of the most rewarding experiences in teaching since I've been here. And yeah, so.
Thank you. And just sort of all these courses live in the various regular departments. These are from a sort of catalog registrar's point of view, just a regular Williams course that students can register for. They don't live in one particular department, and sort of are sort of just part of the general sort of educational landscape now. Now, from the perspective of the Berkshire House of Corrections, Al Bianchi, so where does this fit, and what has been your experience with this arrangement and course?
So I want to thank everybody for being here, because to us this is a very important program, and to feel the support from everybody is been feels good. So thank you everybody for being here. There's so many thank yous, and over the 12 to 15 years there's so many experiences and things that I could pull from. But for us at the House of Correction, really, I think for our guys, of which two are here, and I wanted to thank them for being here. They're both doing tremendously well, and I am so proud of both of them. For us at the House of Correction, the program itself is really about, for us, was building self-esteem, making them feel like they can compete, can belong, and really shine at times with the Williams students. And so we all know that Williams students, in order to be here, are exceptional. They're very capable academically. They're very defined socially. Kayla being a perfect example of the type of student that Williams presents. And so for our guys in the classroom setting, for them to go into the classroom and really do well and show that they belong brings a certain amount of self-esteem and building of self-confidence. Over the years, and I sat in probably the first 5 years of the classes, and so I'm not pushing for the degree from Williams College, but I probably have done enough classes to have done that. And when I was a student, I wouldn't have gotten in here either, so I do appreciate the fact that Williams is in the House of Correction. So our guys always impressed me with the things they were able to share. I promised I wouldn't do this. So I'm very passionate about my guys. And very proud. And these two are examples of that. So anyway, the classes themselves, the interaction, the information, you wouldn't get, I don't think, in a normal Williams College class that these guys are able to share. Life experiences, coming from difficult situations, not having an easy upbringing, maybe going through different experiences through substance abuse, broken homes. Not saying that these guys did that, but several of the guys that are in the courses experience those things. And so the life experiences that they share in those classes, I don't believe you would get in a normal Williams College class. So the kids from Williams, I think, benefit from hearing those things. And some of the experiences, one guy in particular had served in the Iraq War and gotten out, and the things he was able to share that he did when he was forced to do it in war, I don't think you'd hear from a Williams College student in their class. And our guys are honest. They're not going to sugarcoat things. They've been through enough where they express themselves, and they have their own opinions, and they don't worry about being politically correct, and they're going to express their true feelings. And so I think by doing that, I'll give you an example. One time, I'm not sure whose course it was, they were talking about incarceration. I don't know if it was through happiness or Keith's class. And the Williams students, many of them took the stance that incarceration is a bad thing. People shouldn't be incarcerated and be locked up against their will. And so that's certainly one of the stances you can take. Many of our guys spoke up and said, well, how are you going to hold people accountable? I broke the law. I belong to be here. You know, I did what I did, and I know I did what did wrong, but I'm here to try to correct those things. I'm here to try to make myself whole, and I'm here to try to make it right for the people that I offended. And, you know, there's a certain degree of honesty in that. And, again, I think it's just varying opinions, and our guys always brought themselves ready and willing to share those life experiences. So that's, I think, for us at the House of Correction, what we really, what was the hope. And after, was it 12 to 15 years now, I think it's maybe 12, that we've been doing it, every class surprises me. The way they interact, how quickly they get to know each other, and the willingness to share. For the most part, when the course is over, and I usually try to get some time to stop in and see the Williams students, it's one of their favorite courses, and I'll let Kayla talk to that. But and I think that's one of the reasons why we keep it going. It's a benefit for us, and our guys get a lot out of it, and I think it's a benefit for the Williams students too, to get that the sharing of life experiences. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you so much. And maybe Kayla, you could now address this in terms of your experience taking a course as an outside student.
Yeah, so when I started, I was a sophomore at Williams, and as you said, all these courses are just integrated into the course catalog, and I wanted to take a psych class, and the psych class was Psych 161, there was Psych 101 or whatever the first psych class was, and then it was the second psych class that was listed. And I was like, I'm a sophomore, it seems like this could be a good psych class for me, and I clicked on it, and it didn't read the way, like the description of the course didn't read the way that the other descriptions of the psych classes were reading. And I was like, this actually sounds so much more interesting than the other psych classes that I could potentially be taking, and so I signed up for it, and it was over-enrolled, as many classes are, and I emailed Chris Kirby, who was the professor for that course, and I took it with him. And I was the youngest person in the course because, Keith, as you mentioned, it really is mostly seniors who end up in this course. But it just I feel like my whole time at Williams and subsequently I've spent trying to learn both how to think, but also how to be a person and how to be a good person. And I was a religion and art double major, so those things do, I think, inform the way that I think about how to be a person and how to be a good person. But this type of course specifically, like being in the Inside Out course and talking, that first iteration of the class that I took was on positive psychology. It really shaped the way that I was interacting with the world at the time, and then has continued to shape the way that I've interacted with the world. Because I would do my readings, and I was 19, very diligently doing my readings and being like, and this particular reading from this psych researcher is how I'm going to be a good person and have positive psychology. And I would show up in class, and we would talk about the reading a little bit for sure, but conversation and dialogue would quickly devolve, and I got to talk about me and who I was, and I also got to learn about the other people in my class, both the other Williams students, the other outside students. I learned about their lives in new ways that we wouldn't typically be talking about in Williams courses. And also, I was talking to the inside students who were so generous in the ways that they shared and debated and really worked through the materials and the themes together. And when it was over, I really wanted to return. So then I found myself back with Keith and TA'd for him, and then I TA'd for Bernie Ree. His course was about Zen, and we meditated in that course. And I had previously taken his Zen class as a regular English seminar. We were in the Maybe Room in Sawyer, and we were meditating and talking about American literature. And then to see that transform in the House of Correction setting was really remarkable. I can pass it along because I feel like I've been going for a while, but the last thing that I do want to say is that all three of those experiences both were foundational for me like as a student and a learner, but also to watch Professor Kirby and then Professor McPartland and then Professor Rhee all teach those courses. Like I could see even as a student the way that all of you were thinking about pedagogically how you wanted to approach it. And when I was a senior, so over the course of, I was here during the pandemic, so I took a semester off, and then I came back, and then I had put together a syllabus that Al had okayed to teach a class about comics, and then that got pushed off because of the pandemic, and then it got pushed off again, and then finally in my last semester I was able to teach it, which was really so exciting for me. But I would love for in my whole life to be an educator. I right now teach art classes for young people at the Met on Saturdays in addition to my full-time job, and that's so fun. But it was a really extraordinary, like, pedagogical lesson for me to watch the three of you teach that course, and it informed the way, which also I know you worked so closely with me as I developed that syllabus, but like it really has informed the way that I want to approach any teaching and learning that I do in my life. So I'm really grateful for it.
If I may, I just have to tell one story. I forgot to tell it. So being Williams people, I try to tell this story quite a bit to crowds and show the value of the course. We had a gentleman who took the Williams class, and in the House of Correction we have a portfolio program. So everything you complete, anger management, healthy relationships, any educational courses, we make certificates for them to keep, to show that they completed the evidence-based programming. So during this individual's stay, he completed several things, one of which was the Williams College course. And he had some federal charges pending on him that he had to address, and so he had to be brought to Boston where the federal court was and go in front of the judge to argue his case about what kind of time he might get federally. So when he goes in front of the judge, he submits his portfolio for the judge to see. And you can see the judge thumbing through all the portfolio, all the certificates, and he gets to one in particular and he stops. He looks down at it and then looks at the participant. He says, "You completed a Williams College course?" And he said, "Yes, Your Honor, I did." And he said, "Can you talk to me a little bit?" It was Greek ethics, actually. He said, "Can you talk to me about Plato and Socrates a little bit? I'm interested to hear." So he did. He went into his explanation of what he learned, and he says, "I can't believe this." He says, "I'm an Amherst College graduate." And he says, "I'm keeping you there. I was going to give you more time, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep you right where you're at." So the guy got concurrent time rather than additional time. And not only that, when he was done, he said, "I'm going to be calling Amherst College after I'm done here today and find out if they're doing this or not." So kudos to Williams College and a benefit. So.
What are you going to do with philosophy?
Thank you so much. That's an amazing, amazing story. So I was wondering if we could now shift to the inside students. Maybe we could start with you, Thomas, and because you're one of the earliest participants in the inside-outside program. If you could talk about your class and your.
Okay. Is it working? It is. So my experience was one that was honestly like the greatest fulfillment of what I've done to date, which I've done some pretty good things. I started a business, got a great family, but doing the Williams College, I had to drop out in 10th grade due to, issues with, I was a ward of the state since I was a child, so I always let people talk down to me and tell me I wasn't as smart or, wasn't as fluent into certain things. And one of the things the Williams College did for me is, and it's just like everyone's saying it, I'm like shaking right now doing this. it put everybody on an even playing field. It made me know that I was enough, that I was comfortable. You know, I got out of that, did the course and got out of jail, and then went to work for a roofing company. And I actually serviced a lot of these buildings up here in Williams College. And I didn't feel out of place at all. I felt like I belonged here, like it was where I was meant to be. And, you know, it was the course that gave me that confidence. It gave me the fact that, you know, these kids, and one of the greatest things that I noticed with this course is that you couldn't tell who was from, you know, Brazil on a scholarship or whose parents paid for it out of their checking account. Everyone was just so awesome, and like it keeps getting said, it was brought up that we just mashed to. It was like a perfect concoction to like just to grow together and strive together, and as everyone said, you know, give the different viewpoints. So, I mean, the things that I take from that course, forever, I've always wondered about happiness. What makes me happy? I know that I was sitting in jail and I wasn't happy. I know that I own a tree company and I'm still not happy. I'm thinking about closing the company because my happiness is better. But, you know, to sit into a class and when you think everything's been thought of and everything has been done, and then you hear something as simple as what is happiness, and you look around and you notice that nobody has that answer. It's just the same as laughter. If you can define laughter and put it in a universal sense, I'm all ears. But it's one of those things that just makes you think about, you know, on a bigger scheme of things, like the philosophy side of it. Again, what are you going to do with philosophy? My dream at the end of it is to go back to school and get a philosophy degree. I don't care if it pays the bills. I want to know why we're here, what's the point of being here, and what do we have to offer the next generation. And I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things that I personally took from it. The impact, I don't know if I should talk on the impact of like, you know, continuing of it, because it's such an important role in the people that do take it. I mean, it's life-changing, and the students that are, you know, as she was talking, that go in and teach, at the time, I don't know if you realize, like, you're changing the lives of people, but, you know, people go to this school to become senators and, you know, write laws and really change the future for people. And it started at a school inside of a jail that somebody came in and, like, touched my life and, like, turned it around for the better. I had been in for 8.5 years at that point, got out every 2 months and went back in because I had nothing. And knowing that I could do better, I mean, I put together a family, the business, I love it. So, I mean, that's kind of like where I got from it, but I'm gonna pass because I'm like Al.
Thank you so much. Greg?
Yeah, so I think my first expectations going into the college course was whether or not I could do it. I think I was a little bit scared whether I could keep up with the homework and the just the essays and the curriculum of it and stuff. But once I started doing the work and getting to know people, I think it started to come with a burden too, because once I realized that I could successfully complete these courses, it made me look back at myself and say, what are you doing with your life now? You know, because I can no longer have the excuse of whether or not I know I could do it. So I think that was one of the bigger things. I think, like, I've known Al for years. Like, he's talked a little bit about how he's kind of raised me. So when I went into Berkshire County House of Correction, I was, you know, away from society for so long, and I did a prison sentence before that in a different jail that was a little bit more rough, and it was a lot harder to do your time. And when I walked into Berkshire County House of Correction, I met Al Bianchi, and I met some of the guys. It was a different environment, and it was the first time I remember Al reaching out to shake my hand. And up until that point, it was kind of like me against the system and the system against me when I was in, you know, Walpole, Cedar Junction, like a different prison system. And when it was like almost like when he shook my hand, it was like an invisible wall just like disappeared, and I felt like a human being again. And for a long time, I called jail my home. And there was it was a lot of baby steps for me to get to the Williams College course, because the way the jail was set up, first they gave me a job in the kitchen, so I started working in the kitchen. And then, after the kitchen, they had like a couple more programs to do. And they actually had horses at the time. Yeah. They brought me outside. I was taking care of horses. And it was a lot of baby steps to get me to that college course, which I needed because I think if I would have just jumped into different parts of the jail's programs, I don't think I would have been able to successfully complete it. Like Tom said, I think my self-esteem would have went down, and then it could have probably changed the direction of my stay. But since they had such a well-fitting program of each step that I gradually took, by the time I got to the Williams College class, I really wasn't afraid of the professors. Or I was more like worried about like, oh man, I gotta do homework now again and stuff like that, So, but but once I started taking the course and I realized that I could successfully complete it, and Tom kind of reached on it too. What dawned on me throughout my stay and doing the Williams College course is that a lot of these students that are coming in to do the course, even though I'm getting offered college credits and I actually did go to college after this and used these credits actually, but one of the things that dawned on me was that some of these students that are coming from Williams College are going to go off and they're going to do probably big things with their life. So by them talking to some of the inmates on the inside, if they can get a better look at human beings that are incarcerated and that have made mistakes, and they go off and they make a decision and it's based on experience and not just what they think or what they've seen on TV, then we did change something. So I thought that was really big for us, and it was really big for me. And I forget who said it, but it says somebody said that education sets us free with curiosity, but it also condemns us to the brutal truths. And after taking this college course and doing a lot of the other programs in the county jail, when I got out, I couldn't go back to the neighborhood with the same mindset. Like it was like I was aware now. And so it was a lot harder to go back to my old ways. It is hard because society isn't isn't set up like the Williams College course and everything like that. So it is still going to be a struggle, but because I took the Williams College course, and I also, when I left, I've stayed in touch with Al Bianchi and a lot of the other guys from the jail, like since I've been out. They've helped me with jobs. They've just been there to talk to me, and I know if I'm ever in situation where I just need to go up and talk to him, his office is always open, and he's more than happy to call me back. And he's getting ready to retire in a few months, and this guy is still going. So yeah, he genuinely cares. Al Bianchi was one of the guys that really stuck by my side, because I remember when I first did enter the jail, I was a little bit like a stray dog. I didn't have any sense of responsibility. I didn't have any sense of just life on life's terms, so. But through my stay, a lot of things changed, and now I have a beautiful girlfriend. Like Tom, I work all the time, and I live life as it goes by. And anytime I get a chance, like Al called me and said, hey, I got this thing going on for Williams College, I jumped at the chance, because anything I could do for the jail or Williams College, I would be more than happy to.
Thank you so much. Christian, do you want
I just wanted to add one remark about the, let's say, the inside-outside dynamic. So Thomas was in the first inside-out course that the college ever offered, so the first one that I taught. And I was saying that I went in daunted by the task of getting the Williams students, the outside students, and the inside students on equal footing. So you want to know what made that happen? This guy made that happen, really crucially. Will you accept some praise? Is that okay? So Thomas, really and truly, Thomas is one of the most penetrating minds of any student I've ever shared a classroom with. He is one of the most naturally argumentative people I have ever met in the best possible way. And so you have to imagine that first real class we had where we were actually covering ground together, not just a hey, nice to meet you class. We got going and Thomas opened his mouth and it immediately set the level in the room, crucially set the level for the Williams students, the outside students, who knew then not only that they could go hard, but that they were going to have to go hard. So what put the students on an equal footing? I really mean this. What put the students on an equal footing was nothing that I did. What put the students on the equal footing is that Thomas argued circles around them week after week after week. So, man, you were the equalizer.
So before we open it up to the audience, because we have limited time left, is there something else that people who want to add about sort of their experiences, the impact, and how different it was, and also maybe preconceptions, because the outside students certainly came in with certain kind of preconceptions about the inside students, and vice versa. You probably had certain kind of expectations or stereotypes about the Williams students, and also maybe some of the outside students came in with sort of a superiority complex or entitlement that they would, that, and then would be surprised at the level of discussion from within the classroom. I don't know. So do you have anything to add, or that you would want to add before we open it up to the general?
I think honestly the students were just as accepting as the inmates. I didn't really notice any type of looking down, or everyone was there for education. And I mean, I think when everyone's trying to educate and go for a brighter, outcome and positive outcome, that it kind of just, it's the coercion or whatever word I'm looking for. Now I sound stupid in front of you, sorry. But I think that dynamic was there. So I didn't see any judgy or anyone that thought they were up on, I mean, there was Williams College people that weren't wearing deodorant. That's how, like, nobody cared. But, so I don't see it. I thought it was great.
No. Do you remember what you thought they might be like? Do you remember, like, 2 weeks before they showed up?
I just thought snobbish. But that was my preconceived notion of rich people. But I mean, growing up in poverty, you don't come across. And I grew up on Cape Cod, so I should have been more acclimated to it. But down where I'm from, like you go up to the rich town and they're walking around with the sweatshirts and they're looking down on you. None of that. As I said, none of that happened in this era, and I think Williams does a really good job of kind of making equality the number one and making people feel as they can come themselves. And I think that's one of the most important roles in all of humanity, is just being able to be yourself. You're gonna restrict a lot of growth if you can't be yourself. And the Edisons of the world, or if they weren't able to practice the light bulb, where would we be? So I honestly think it was awesome. It was a great. I mean, I loved it. So
yeah, I'm glad you felt that way, because I think we worked very hard to try to sort of create that kind of structure around this. Yeah. So should we open it up for general conversation? And so if you have a question, we have, and I will repeat the question. And if we, for the sake of time, you could be brief in your question. So yes, sir. Yeah.
Yes. Underneath what you're saying, first of all, thank you. Underneath what you're saying, I hear something rumbling about seeing and being seen, and hearing and being heard. That doesn't have to do with the content of the course, but the engagement. And I'm just curious to hear your views on that.
Yeah, so
or your experience of it.
Yeah, so about seeing and being seen, hearing and being heard, and sort of the content almost like secondary to the overall process.
So it wasn't much. It's a tough question for me. I don't really think I cared about being heard as much. I was more just attending the course for the betterment of the course. I knew that the jail was trying to do great things in bringing this in, and it would pass along education to those that come. And that was more of what I was doing it for, was to help them and get the numbers and do it. And that's why I'm doing it here today. I don't want this program to end. This is something that touches lives. So for me to be heard, or for them to be heard from coming to me, like I said, I did it more just so that this program was a success. That's how I felt on it.
So, and Christian or Keith could probably talk on this, but the way the classroom itself is set up, they go into small groups to discuss the question, and it opens up opportunity, and it's maybe 4 Williams kids or 2 Williams kids with 2 inside students, and so they may discuss the question together, and then so you'll have 4 or 5 different groups that are discussing the question that the professor would ask, and then they get into the larger group to discuss. And so it opens up everybody an opportunity to express themselves, because some people talk better in large groups and some don't do so well in the larger group setting, but they'll share a lot in the smaller group setting. And the interactions that I was able to see were incredible. So you'd see our guys, as time went on, more willing to open up. As time went on, I said, I have an opinion on that, and I can talk about that, that question. And they do the professors have all been amazing, but they do an incredible job of making sure our guys have questions that they can relate to, and almost like Christian said, is giving them a leg up on terms of life experiences and those things. And so the Williams kids are hearing life experiences that they probably haven't heard or seen too much hands-on. So it's kind of the setup of the class really helps that.
Is that also your experience, Kayla? Because you said you picked psychology thinking it was going to be just a regular psychology course, but then you saw different content. So what did you think about the content versus the structure?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say that everything was grounded in the homework that we had done and the reading that we had done. It wasn't that work was secondary to what was happening. It just was like that work that we were doing acted as a foil for conversations that we had that started there and then lifted off and continued above and beyond that. And like, I had conversations that I was really challenged by over my time that I was in the House of Corrections. I think often of one man who was in one of the classes who had really different political opinions than I had. And he and I would sort of like, he was trying at the beginning of the semester, he was sort of trying to like goad me into having debates with him, and I was like, I don't even want to have this debate with you, like I just think you're wrong, which obviously is never the way to go. But over the course of that semester, he and I ended up really being able to have like, it developed into such a nice relationship, and I was able to hear him more and he was able to hear me more, and it was like, and that was grounded in the work that we were doing, and also it was so far removed from the reading that we had. And I think that all of my experiences in these classes were really like that, because it was like on many levels things were happening at the same time. So it was like we were talking about the reading, but we were also talking about something that had happened that week, and we were also talking about something that I had lived years ago or that they had lived years ago, and that was true, again, like both of the inside students and the outside students. So it was like my Williams classmates were also talking about things that, it was like we were all doing that together.
Yeah, and that's what I'm wondering about in a Gaudino kind of sense. What did you learn about you and how you see and how you hear?
I think I learned that there was the world was so big. Like this sounds very trite, but that there was so much that I didn't know, that like I also wasn't going to be able to conquer just by having these academic readings placed in front of me, and that I would only be able to approach if I really took seriously the challenge of like meeting other people, both while I was at Williams and also beyond. And I think that this was, I took unusual classes. I always prioritized taking unusual classes when I was at Williams. And I think that has always, like, this particular structure really challenged me to think about how to be a person, which I said before. But does that answer your question? Okay.
Thank you. Yes, Parker?
Change, individual change, was a big topic for Professor Gaudino, an interest. And I would like to know, particularly because of the whole thing about being incarcerated, but more generally, how you see some individuals as being more capable of making important changes, and also why some individuals do not make those changes, even though they may rationally realize that making them would be to their advantage. What is the difference, and what happens, especially if you're inside? One person does better, one person does less well. What is this?
So the question is about change and reflecting on change and who changes and who does not change, and how do you think about how has this experience changed you?
I do think one big thing is the environment outside. Even if you want to change and you have it in you to change, I think that some of these guys that are inside anyways have family and have ties to things like gangs or other people that don't really want to allow them to change. So I think that sometimes it's hard when you step out and you have all this knowledge that you could use, but doing that you almost have to walk away from everything that you've known your whole life to do it. So I think that sometimes even though guys have the same opportunities and they have the same chance, I think some people are more afraid than others to make that change.
If I can touch on that real quick, I also think it comes down to just a good, solid decision for oneself, because it comes down to drinking, it comes down to people that use drugs. If you mean it hard enough, and I'm speaking from experience, I've quit quite a few substances cold turkey, quit drinking cold turkey. When you make that decision, you'll go to the ends of the world to really make it not happen again. And it comes with, as Greg just touched on, being willing to make that change. But if it's a negative in your life and you're looking for the positive, then you need to be willing to let go of everything. I have completely isolated myself to solely people that have my best interest at heart. I don't care about my friends of the past because, they weren't there. So when it comes to change, and if you're willing to change, you have to make that decision that it is not what you want. It's not who you are. I don't identify as a drinker anymore. I don't identify as a convict anymore. I'm a family man. I go to work and I raise my kids, and they're going to know better than I did. That's who I identify today. And it was the choice that, to be honest with you, what really got me, and the sheriff's department kind of saved my life on this. I had completed their program before with work release and step down, and I got so overwhelmed with life that within a couple months I went back and I got blacklisted, and they said, you'll get nothing. And honestly, I made the decision right there. I said, out of spite, I said, okay, if you guys don't want to help me when I needed help, then I'll never come back. I'll never get you another paycheck. And that's what I did. And now the funny thing is that most of the sheriff's department I do their tree work for, and the same guy that I was told blacklisted me, I was just at his house a couple weeks ago, and I have no animosity towards him. He saved my life by doing that. Whether it was at the time, it was the worst thing for me. But you know what? Sitting here 15 years later, 14 years later, it saved my life, and I have not a gripe with the guy. But it all came down to decision, and you have to know in your soul that you're just done. And that's what it was for me.
Anybody else want to comment? Yeah.
I think they said it as well as anybody can. If over 30 years, that's been my drive, is to affect change. And everybody here knows change is difficult. And when you come from situations that have held you down and hear the negatives all the time about you can't do this, or you're not capable of doing that, to get positives, and that's what we try to build on, is positive. You can do this. You're capable. You have people that care about you.
Thank you. Yes, Steve?
Yep. Thank you so much for presenting today. And you never have to apologize for getting emotional about something this powerful. Because what you're talking about here is you're actually returning us from a punishment system to an actual correction system. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it needs to go on a much larger level. It can't just be this one program. You talked about how you've been in other systems. It isn't like this. I tried teaching, about 20 years ago, I did a program teaching right brain drawing techniques to juvenile drug offenders in Arizona. And I was seeing incredible things in terms of changing their building and confidence. Kids who's like, I can't draw. And then by the end of the fifth or sixth class, they're like, wow, I can. And then I came in midway through the program through security, and they told me, sorry, your program's been canceled. Couldn't get anybody to tell me why, couldn't get anything what's going on. It was over. And I never got to see those kids again. They never got to see me, and I don't know what happened beyond it. So even when you get it going, it's tough. And you talk, Magnús, about how hard it is to get this thing going. You guys went through, you guys had the commitment, the passion. Al, what you had to do in your bureaucracy, I have no idea, but it had to have been incredibly difficult. How do we make this bigger? How do we get other people to accept it? Do you go around to like National Conference of State Legislatures? Do you go around to corrections conventions if they have such a thing? I mean, how do you grow this so it isn't just one program in one place? Because this is exactly what true prison reform looks like.
Steve, I just want to second the question, as it were, and I can do it with one detail. So when we first met with the sheriff to get permissions, who was great, Paula Consolini and I had a pitch. We had our pitch deck with us, and we had all the points we were going to make, and we got 2 bullet points into it, and he said, let me start. We're in. We want to do this. So he wasn't actually, that wasn't the obstacle. What was a kind of ambient obstacle, we were explaining all the things we were going to do, and we could supply some funds, and we could supply logistical support, and then it just spilled out of Paula's mouth. She said, and we'll take care of all the press releases, we'll handle the media, and he was like, So he said, not that. He said, we can't go public with this. And we cocked our heads to ask the question. He said, nobody wants to hear good news coming out of prisons. What was that? So this has loosened up somewhat over the 12 years that we've been offering it. There has been some press coverage, though having been in that conversation, I was very nervous the first time, even just a writer for the alumni magazine called me. I said, are we blowing the cover on the Inside program? But the people within the system, some of them at least, know what works and are committed to good outcomes, but we're part of a bigger structure with a kind of larger set of policy preference that block even the most committed and informed people working in the system.
Off of that, we talk about stigmas, right? And of course, the stigma of incarceration, and these two guys could certainly talk to that, about they did their time, they served their consequences for what they did, and they used the time there to better themselves. And the more society understands that we're not there for punishment. The punishment is they're being sent to us, and we're not there to punish them again, we're there to help them. And it's important for society to realize when it's time to get out, we got to give them a break, and make it a little bit easier for them too to succeed. They worked really hard when they were with us, and they should be rewarded for that. I think society knowing that and saying, okay, let's give them a chance would certainly help too.
Anybody else want to?
I do just really quickly want to say that, like, at least from where I sit, we owe a huge debt of gratitude to Al and to that sheriff's department and to the DA, who, at least when I was there, was working in Berkshire County. The orientation towards, like, the whole system seems different in Berkshire County. When I was a student at Williams, I interned one summer with Columbia with their Justice and Education Initiative, and I taught workshops on Rikers Island in New York, and I've subsequently been in the New York landscape, working mostly in diversion programming and alternative to incarceration programming, which is sort of a step away and more into community-based programming, because that is what I've seen work here. Like, really, I understand that it's not community-based, but it is so community-based in the approach that you have. And if I could take a chapter out of your book, I 1000% would. It just, like, it's a testament to you all and what you're doing that this is happening.
Yes, in the very back.
Yep, thank you. I'm curious about the comment that you made in the beginning about the program, or seemingly the consequence of the program potentially allowing formerly incarcerated or incarcerated people to earn a Williams degree, which to me seems like the natural evolution of 12 years of this program, given the kind of reflections that were shared by the people who did the program and clear reciprocal impact on students. I'm curious where that discussion lies, if at all, and why that wouldn't be a key consideration of the results of the program, in that the people who did the program would likely have an even deeper impact as full-time students, and then further into the world as well, to the point that was made, bring different perspectives into rooms that they would otherwise not be privileged to access. And I think that this is a natural extension of Steve's question, because, you know, in many ways we think about prison reform on the side of the sheriff's department or correctional facilities, but there are, to steal the word, sort of ambient disadvantages or blockers on the side of the institution that seemingly is supportive as well. And so I'm curious about the dialogue that came before and where that has sort of evolved, given the success of this program, and how we can facilitate something like that moving forward.
Wow, that's a very important and profound question. How should we think of
that? I've noticed trying to talk to people at Williams and at other places about trying to get different programming going is just how strong the winds against you are. And in not ways that are like malicious or anything, right? But you start asking, oh, could we get a program to help incarcerated people get apprenticeships in trades, right? There's a huge shortage of tradespeople in this area. There's huge amounts of evidence that all sorts of things about recidivism are tied to the ability to get like meaningful work. And what people will then say to you is like, oh, what, so you have to go to jail in order to be part of this program? And you just kind of, I mean, it's this like bizarre reaction where people will argue against, like, so when I taught at Auburn, New York has this TAP, or tuition assistance program for New York State residents. And it had been the case that Syracuse had an entire extension program at Auburn. It's very close by. And then under one of the governors, they just cut TAP for inmates. And then if you start asking, we want to reestablish something like this, they're like, oh, so you want our money to go to people who are criminals, right? What about people who aren't criminals? And that might be an argument, except for then the next step isn't, oh, yeah, let's have like broad-based programs that help people that aren't criminals. It's like you use the argument, well, why would we do this with the money rather than that, to not do this with the money, but then you don't do that either, right? And that's this kind of continual problem, right? I mean, so, yeah, if anybody could figure out how to do it, it'd be great, right? But that seems to be like such, and I think when Christian was talking about not doing press releases, the worry, right, is always you're giving something to this group that you're not giving to this other group. Like, why don't I get Williams College credit, right? Why don't other people get it? Like, there's that kind of politics that I think people are worried about. So I think this might be very pessimistic, but I think that's like the stuff that people are actually facing.
It might also be we should change our approach and view. We're maybe too dominated by economic thinking, so everything is a zero-sum game or cost-benefit analysis, instead of framing the conversation about priorities. What are our priorities and how do we get there? And not this sort of, if you get there, you're taking away from somebody else. And that's not a helpful conversation, especially when you're talking about this. So in related to your question, initially it was all about, can we get this going? And can we get this started? And especially trying to get this equal footing, so hence the credit thing. But now, fortunately, I think we're seeing that the college has a much more open-minded policy in terms of transfer students. There's now more veterans coming in, more sort of non-traditional students. So I think we have seen in our, wouldn't you agree, that in our time here for the last 20 years, there's been a drastic change in the student body, especially people who come with sort of not the classic 18-year-old coming straight out of high school. So it's possible, related to your question, that in the future we might be able to see maybe admitting a different type of student than traditionally has been at this college. And so that might be sort of the next phase of this program, and the next Gaudino initiative, which that would be very, very exciting. But I think we should then be very clear, and I think I would personally support that sort of in terms of our priority, not only as an educational institution, but also secondly, which is just as important, of our role here in this Berkshire County. You know, we live here and we work here, and who we are in our local community, and that should also be a priority as well. Yes.
Just so you know, also, Williams not only has done this course, but Williams does tutoring on Tuesday nights. So for our guys that take this course, they also have Williams students that come down and tutor, so that the papers, the punctuation, and all that goes with a college paper. They get help from the Williams College students, which Kayla was part of. And then there's also a book club on Friday nights that the Williams students come down and do a book club. Now, I think that's incredible that you have college kids willing to spend their Friday night at the House of Correction having a book club with a bunch of guys. So Williams has really reached out, and they do more. And Keith has done a class trying to help them also prepare for proper college etiquette and writing skills, so they could be prepared to take the course. So Paula is an amazing person. If you've talked to her 10 minutes, you understand the energy that she has around all her programs, and we're blessed to be part of this whole process. So.
Our generation plan for Williamstown. I've got a bicycle that's like attached to a generator, so we're set.
So do we have time for one more question? Yes?
Thank you so much. And I want to say, Thomas and Greg, right? I get from your comments also that, I mean, Al and the Berkshire House of Correction, also that there's something going on here that's, you know, unfortunately not very typical. I mean, it's wonderful, everything that Williams has done, of course, but it sounds like you are coming into a place, because Greg, you mentioned even before you took the course that, you know, Al was just the fact that he extended his hand and then starts to kind of, you know, give you all these opportunities to slowly get a handle on yourself. And I just wish that, you know, almost you could like go on the road, because I feel like, I don't think it's a stereotype to say like most institutions in the United States do not seem to be like what you've described. I mean, I was so moved just Al by your comments, and also, you know, Thomas and Greg. It just sounds like something already is going on there that, you know, Williams honestly did a wonderful job also with contributing to. But I wish that this could be more, I wish you could like do a road show, you know, because I mean, I don't feel like that's going on in other places, and so many people are getting lost in the system that could be, you know, coming out, and it would be so much of a better thing.
I think the view that, you know, this is our county. This is anybody from your family. It could be your father. It could be your brother. It could be a loved one that could have made a mistake and ended up with us. And so how would you want your loved one treated? And so that's the avenue we take. And I think it's healthy if we all understand that anybody can make a mistake, and what are we going to do to help that, and so that that mistake doesn't happen again, because I'm sure there's more things that played into it than just making a bad choice. So
imagine more profound and better fitting closing statement than what you just said. And before you join me in thanking our panelists, I think, Amy, you have some housekeeping instructions.
Yeah, so that was really, really moving and quite powerful. Thank you all so much. Let's thank our panelists to start.